happened when you did find out about your daughter? Because they did give you a runaround.
Where were you when you found out? Like, who called you? How did you even know something was happening?
Kenny called me, her boyfriend. I was home in bed. Kenny called me and said that somebody kicked in the door and he thinks Breonna is shot. And I'm like, what do you mean you think she's shot? Where is he? He said he couldn't see. He was yelling her name and like screaming for her. But so of course I jump up and we get disconnected. I drop the phone and whatnot. But so I get dressed and I head over there. But in the middle of me heading over there, I'm calling Kenny's phone. He's not answering. So I'm calling Breonna's phone and she's not answering. And so when I get to her street, it's lined with police. There's an officer at the end of the road who I tell that I need to get through there. Something's going on with my daughter. She tells me that I needed to get to the hospital, that 2 ambulances had been through. One took an officer and the other took the girl, whoever was hurt. And when I get to the hospital, I'll tell them why they're there. So they check. She comes back and said, well, she's not here. And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe I got here before her. And so I sat there for about 2 hours and the lady comes out and says, well, ma'am, there's no recollection of this person even being on the way. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I needed to get back to the apartment.
Wow.
So wait, they sent you to the hospital knowing that she was not at the hospital?
Yeah. And
she was still in the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Like, why did they say this even happened?
Well, at that point, they didn't. No one knew what was quite going on. But once I got back, I was able to get through a little more, so I was closer to the apartment. And there were some more officers kind of standing there hanging around. So I told them who I was and that I needed to get into the apartment and see what was going on with my daughter. So they told me to hang tight, that a detective would come over and talk to me. And so we stood out there about 2 hours before the detective came over. So when he comes over, again, introductions, who I am, who he is. And so he asked me if I knew of anybody who would want to hurt Breonna or Kenny. And so of course I say no, of course not. Like,
why would they ask you that? Why would they ask you that when they knew who did that to her?
Well, at this point, they still hadn't told me who did this and what happened.
Oh.
So, he's just, yeah. So I asked, where's Kenny? I need to talk to Kenny. And so he told me to hang tight. So he came back about another hour and a half, 2 hours later, and he asked, had Breonna and Kenny been having any problems? And I'm like, are you insinuating Kenny did something to Breonna? Because Kenny would never hurt her. So I'm like, so at this point I'm screaming, where's Kenny? I need to talk to Kenny. So he says, well, Kenny's at one of our offices trying to help us piece together what happened here tonight. So they say, he said, well, I asked about the officer being shot. I said, well, why was there? They said an officer was shot. He said, well, he was here responding to a call. And I said, a call for what? And he said, well, there were some officers there to serve a narcotics warrant. And I said, for who? Because Breonna and Kenny ain't selling no narcotics. And he said he wasn't for sure. He hadn't seen the warrant. And I said, well, I want to see the warrant. And he said, well, that he didn't know where it was, that they hadn't seen it, that it could have gotten lost in the shuffle of things. So he tells us to wait again. So it was probably about 11 a.m. when he comes back over and tells us that it'll be a little bit longer. They'll be wrapping up and that we'll be able to get into the house. And I say, well, why won't you tell me where Breonna is? I need to see Breonna. And he says, well, she's still in the apartment.
Wow. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we have to make you tell this story. And even.
But it's important that people know the details of what it is that you went through, the cover-ups And I can't even imagine how that must feel to know that they gave you the runaround like that at that time. And the only thing you want to know is, where is my daughter?
Exactly. And so when he says she's in the apartment, I knew what that meant at that time. So I said, but I want to see her. I need to see her. I need to know that it's her. And he said, well, we've identified her through paperwork. And I said, well, how do you know it's her? Because there's 2 women that live in that apartment. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, I'm sure, because my other daughter lives in that apartment. But at the time, I knew she wasn't home, but I wanted to see Breonna. And he said that I still couldn't see her, that it would be up to the coroner. So the coroner finally arrives, and it was about 1:30 p.m. when the coroner comes out and says, you know, that I wouldn't be allowed to see her, and that they've already identified her. And so they kind of just, some other people like snuck her away in this van while the coroner was talking to us.
Has at any point anyone apologized to you?
No.
Has at any I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Let's give her a moment.
I'm okay.
Okay. No, we really do appreciate you for your strength and being able to relay this story. I know you've told it countless times, and we just want people to hear your story, and we want some action to be taken. What does justice look like for you now?
These officers being fired and arrested. If anybody else would have done it, they'd be arrested. So they obtained a warrant under a lie. They told several stories, and so they should be arrested. I mean, they lied. There was no reason for them to be there. And the person you wanted, so you proclaimed to want it, was in custody. So to go in there at 1 a.m. and scare her and kill her,